Good morning, fifth grade. We're going to continue reading Esperanza Rising. You guys are going to listen to the first part of chapter 2, and then we're going to pick back up in the whole group lesson. In your quick write, it says reread the last paragraph on page 8. I want you to cross out the 8 and make that a 3. Reread the last paragraph on page 3 and draw a picture of what Esperanza is thinking, and then write a caption for your picture. So if you're on page 3, you're at the part where she and Papa are feeling the heartbeat of the earth. So you need to draw a picture and then write a caption for your picture. Don't spend too much time. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the focus question. It says, how does the author's use of figurative language impact the reader? And how does the author's use of foreshadowing impact the reader? So we're going to look at 2 techniques the author uses and how those techniques impact the reader's understanding. Before we get started, we are going to learn 3 vocabulary words. The first word is superstition. That is when you believe in supernatural beings, and so some people are superstitious about Friday the 13th because it's bad luck. Some people think 4-leaf clovers are good luck. So this is a picture of superstition. It has to do with good luck and bad luck. The next word is premonition. That's when you just have a bad feeling about something and you're not sure why. You have a premonition. Okay? And then this is premonition, sorry. Sandra Bullock is in a graveyard, and on her face you could tell she feels like something bad is about to happen. And then number 3, serenade. That's when people come and sing to you, specifically like the girl is on her balcony and the boy's below and he's singing love songs to her. That's a serenade. Alright, so we're going to get started with page 4. It's the beginning of chapter 2, Las Uvas, which means grapes, and this is 6 years later. My pages are different, but we are going to read until this first break. Okay, and we know that this break means that time has passed. Okay, so we're just going to read the first part of chapter 2 today, and then in the whole group lesson, we'll move beyond that. As we're reading, you're looking for CSPS. All right, character setting, problem, and solution. Let's start reading. Papa handed Esperanza the knife. The short blade was curved like a scythe, its flat wooden handle fitting snugly in her palm. This job was usually reserved for the eldest son of a wealthy rancher, but since Esperanza was an only child and Papa's pride and glory, she was always given the honor. Okay, that's a clue about Esperanza for character. She's the only child and Papa's pride and joy. Last night she had watched Papa sharpen the knife back and forth across the stone, so she knew the tool was edged like a razor. Cuidate los dedos, said Papa. Watch your fingers. The August sun promised a dry afternoon in Aguascalientes, Mexico. Everyone who lived and worked in El Rancho de las Rosas was gathered at the edge of the field. Esperanza's family, the house servants in their long white aprons, the vaqueros already sitting on their horses, ready to ride out to the cattle, and 50 or 60 campesinos, straw hats in their hands, holding their own knives ready. They were covered top to bottom in long-sleeved shirts, baggy pants tied at the ankles and string, and bandanas wrapped around their foreheads and necks to protect them from the sun, dust, and spiders. Esperanza, on the other hand, this is a clue about the character, wore a light silk dress that stopped above her summer boots and no hat. On the top of her head, A wide satin ribbon was tied in a big bow, and the tails trailing down her long black hair. The clusters were heavy on the vine and ready to deliver. Esperanza's parents, Ramona and Sixto Ortega, stood nearby, Mama tall and elegant, her hair in the usual braided wreath that crowned her head, and Papa barely taller than Mama, his gray mustache twisted up at the sides. He swept her hand towards the grapevine, signaling Esperanza. When she walked towards the arbors and glanced back at her parents, they both smiled and nodded, encouraging her forward. When she reached the vine, she separated the leaves and carefully grasped a thick stem. She put the knife to it, and with a quick swipe, the heavy cluster of grapes dropped into her waiting hand. She walked back to Papa and handed him the fruit. Papa kissed it for all to see. And so we know, in this first section, we know Esperanza is with her family, and they are doing this ritual. She's with her family and all the workers on the farm, and she's dressed really nicely in this light silk dress. And because she's only an eldest daughter, she gets to cut the first cluster of grapes, and this is a ritual that her family must do every year to signal that it's time for the harvest. And so after, Esperanza cut the cluster of grapes and she brings it back to Papa, he holds it up, and that is the signal that, everyone else can start harvesting the grapes. Okay, and so when we're describing the character, I want you to put in your own words what you learned about Esperanza in this section and a quote from the text. So you can choose any of the quotes that I've highlighted to support your answer. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for number 2. It asks us to describe the setting, and if we go back, we know that she is outside. She's at, El Rancho de las Rosas, and everyone is gathered at the edge of the field. Her family and all the house servants are gathered at the edge of the field of El Rancho de las Rosas. And we know that she is, she's actually walking into the vineyard, because it says that, she is walking towards the arbors. And that's something we learned yesterday, that farmers train grapes in arbors. All right, so silently put the setting in your own words, and then you can use one of the quotes in green to support your answer. So far, we haven't found a problem yet, so we're going to keep reading. Where it says, La cosecha. La cosecha, said Papa, harvest. Ole, ole, a cheer echoed around them. The campesinos, the field workers, spread out over the land and began to task the reaping fields. That means they're picking the grapes. Esperanza stood between Mama and Papa with her arms linked to theirs and admired the activity of the workers. Pappy, this is my favorite time of year, she said, watching the brightly colored shirts of the workers slowly moving among the arbors. Wagons rattled back and forth from the field to the big barns where the grapes would be stored until they went to the winery. Is the reason because when the picking is done, it will be someone's birthday and time for a big fiesta? Papa asked. Esperanza smiled. When the grapes delivered their harvest, she always turned another year. This year, she would be 13. The picking would take 3 weeks, and then, like every other year, Mama and Papa would host a fiesta for the harvest and for her birthday. Marisol Rodriguez, her best friend, would come with her family to celebrate. Her father was a fruit rancher, and they lived on a neighboring property. Even though their houses were acres apart, they met every Saturday beneath the home oak on a rise between the two ranches. Her other friends, Chita and Barina, would be at the party too, but they lived farther away, and Esperanza didn't see them often. Their classes at St. Francis didn't start again until after the harvest, and she couldn't wait to see them. When they were all together, they would talk about one thing, their quinceañeras, the preparation parties they would have when they turned 15. They still had 2 more years to wait, but so much to discuss. The beautiful white gowns they would wear, the big celebrations where they would be presented to the sons of the richest families who would dance with them. After their quinceañeras, they would be old enough to be courted, marry, and become las patronas, the heads of their households, rising to the positions of their mothers before them. Esperanza preferred to think, though, that she and her someday husband would live with Mama and Papa forever, because she couldn't imagine anywhere other than El Rancho de las Rosas, or with any fewer servants, or without being surrounded by people who adore her. Okay, let's go back. And Esperanza hints at the problem. She hints at this problem. She's describing, the narrator's describing her friends, how she's going to have her birthday party after the harvest, and how, she and her friends, when they get together, they talk about their quinceañeras, and how it's this big party where finally they're like allowed to date, and they're going to find someone to marry. And then Esperanza says, you know what, like, I think I'd just rather live with my mom and dad, and maybe that would be okay with my husband, because, and she says she can't imagine living anywhere else. She says, or with fewer servants, and this is something I want you to pick up on about Esperanza. She's very wealthy, very, very wealthy, and she's accustomed to people doing what she says. She's accustomed to people waiting on her hand and foot. And so she can't imagine actually having to, be the leader of something. She can't imagine, leading a household or not having many servants, which she probably wouldn't when she first got married. Okay, so go ahead and put the problem in your own words, and then you have these quotes in pink to support your answer. And we know there's not really a solution. She hasn't, she wants to be surrounded by people who love her, and there's not really a solution to the problem. And so in box 4, you can write, the problem was not solved. All right, and then obviously you won't have a quote. Last, we're going to say, it says, how does Esperanza respond to challenge? There's not a lot of evidence that she's facing a challenge right now. So instead, you could write above it, describe Esperanza's role in the harvest. And then you can use boxes 1, 2, and 3 to help you with that.